We're talking about social and emotional learning today for adult education. My name is Satchka Oates. I work for the American Institutes for Research and also CalPro. And I wanted to start with our presenters' introductions. Again, we published this evidence to action research brief on social and emotional learning. And these are all our co-authors, and we're all here to share our, their expertise. And thank you so much for joining. Kim, would you like to start us off with your
Sure.
introductions? Thank you.
Hi, I'm happy to be with all of you today. My name is Kim Kenzora. I'm a researcher at the American Institutes for Research, and I evaluate social and emotional learning programs and other programs focused on student support.
And Stephen?
Hi, everybody. Stephen Casperite, assistant principal, soon to be principal at Placer School for Adults. I've been a former special ed teacher. I run 3 inmate education programs along with our regular programs. So social emotional learning and trauma-informed learning have found their way into my doctoral studies. So I'm studying the effects of trauma and suffering on the development of human consciousness. So it's been a near and dear passion of mine to try and bring this into the adult ed world. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you,
Good
Stephen.
afternoon.
Veronica?
I'm sorry, I beat you to it. Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Tyler, and I am a coordinator for LAUSD's Division of Adult and Career Education, and we go by the acronym DACE. I support curriculum development and instructional practices for our schools, obviously, because of my title and my role, right, I support integrating social emotional learning into our curriculum. And I'm happy to be with you guys today.
Thank you, Veronica. All right. Now that the presenters' introductions are done, let us learn a little bit about you. If you're able to type in the chat to respond to the 2 questions here, what's your role at your agency? Are you an instructor? Are you a counselor? Let us know. Are you an administrator? And also, what attracted you to this webinar? What do you hope to gain today? And while everyone's typing, I'd like to ask that throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we will try to answer as many questions as we can. And if we run out of time, we will be following up with an email. So let me see. Thank you. All the chats are coming in. Keep them coming. Teacher. Thank you so much. Oh, wonderful. Academic coach. ABE teacher. Instructor. Great to have you all. Thank you for joining us. Oh, thank you, Diana. Great to see you. And I see some administrators here as well. Thank you so much. ESL teacher, great. All right. Please keep them coming, but we're gonna move on. And we're gonna start with this emotional intelligence poll. And Kim, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'll be talking a little bit about sort of the social and emotional learning side of these things. And one of the frameworks for understanding social emotional learning, especially for adults, is emotional intelligence. And so for one of my projects, we did a statewide educator well-being survey in Illinois last year. And one of the scales was an emotional intelligence scale. So just to put you in the frame of mind around, so what is emotional intelligence and how can we do this? What I'd like to do is, and this is entirely anonymous, but ask you to to just take a couple items. So it's a little online survey. And as folks start taking the survey, we'll start to see results. So you can either use your phone and scan that QR code that's on the left side of the screen, or you can go to menti.com and enter that code, the 34578739, and you'll see 3 short questions that ask about uh, emotional intelligence. And we'll see how this group responds, and then I'll show you what the data showed us last year from educators in the state of Illinois, just to give you some comparison. So the point of this is just to start you thinking about what are some of the skills and capacities that we want to try to develop, not only in adult learners, but in our staff as well. So it looks like 13 of you have completed it at this point, 15, 16. That's great. Looks like you folks feel good about your emotional intelligence skills. Some pretty high averages here. Getting higher. The full scale on the Illinois survey is 6 items, but the idea is, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, that developing a vocabulary for identifying and understanding your emotions is an important skill, as well as expressing emotions, very important. So we're up to 25. I'm going to stop sharing now and come back, and I'm going to show you. Can we go back to Josie's? There we go. Perfect. And so I'm going to show you that these are the little blurry the results from Illinois from last summer. We did the survey last spring, and we saw very distinct gender differences in the results of the survey. So I'm showing you results for these 3 items separately for male and female respondents. You can see that the most common answers were agree, followed by similar levels of disagree and strongly agree, but by far the most common answers were agree, and that's what we saw in the group that in this group that we've assembled today. For all of these items, female respondents responded more positively to these items than the male respondents did. So that just gives you an idea of what we're looking at and what we're trying to understand here. So thank you for participating in that. I hope it kind of puts you in the right frame of mind here. So when we talk about social emotional learning for adult learners or for anybody, what is it exactly that we're talking about? And I want to share with you this model that the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning has developed. And social emotional learning is the process through which students or anybody can acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So the 5 sort of component skills when we're talking about social emotional learning are shown in this sort of wheel chart. The 2 that are in orange are inwardly focused, self-awareness and self-management. The 2 that are green are outwardly focused, social awareness and relationship skills or social skills. And then there's that responsible decision making, sort of executive functioning piece. That's an important component of social and emotional learning as well. So this sort of 5-part competence model is what a lot of people are talking about when they talk about social emotional learning. Particularly for adult um, uh, respondents, users, groups, emotional intelligence becomes an important framework. And what I'm showing you on this slide is something called a mood meter. There's a program that's we're actually currently evaluating it in Los Angeles Unified. Um, that spends a year focusing on staff emotional intelligence, and then after that year it rolls out to students. But it focuses on recognizing emotions, understanding the causes and consequences of emotions, and that uses this mood meter so to help people learn that skill. So the idea is you look at this uh, color block and you try to figure out how you're feeling, where more pleasant emotions are on the right hand side and more energetic feelings are on the top. So there's largely these quadrants, and you can find how you're feeling. And this gives you like some vocabulary, which may be helpful as well for folks who are English learners. But just gives you a sense of where are we, and some teachers use this mood meter as a way of checking in with the emotional climate of their classroom as they're teaching. um, Another framework for social emotional learning in adult education is mindfulness. um, there are programs like CARE, which I've evaluated in a couple studies now, um, that really focuses on mindfulness. And mindfulness includes meditation, but isn't only meditation. It includes other practices like nature walks, breathing practice, mindful listening, experiencing joy. There are lots of there are many mindfulness practices that go beyond what people normally think of as just sort of sitting there with, with in traditional meditation. There are lots of ways, but there's a huge literature actually on the power of mindfulness for reducing burnout, managing stress, um, both for educators and for students. So it's a very helpful practice. The third framework that I'll mention, and Stephen mentioned this also, is trauma-informed educational approaches. And these don't have as strong an evidence base yet, but that study that I mentioned for Illinois, where we're measuring educator well-being statewide, um, one of the initiatives is a statewide rollout of a trauma responsive educational approach in schools. And the idea is to understand that students bring a lot of they bring their whole selves with them to school, including their history of adverse experiences, and that can affect how they react in the school setting. And school environments can be more sensitive to how some people are responding to events in ways that are informed by their traumatic pasts. So still developing the literature here, but the idea is that trauma responsive approaches are really for the whole school environment, although there are individual trauma interventions as well. Okay, so that's it for frameworks. I will let folks move on from here and
Thank you,
connect us
Kim.
to the work.
Thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
Now I would like to connect research to practice a little bit. And so why do social emotional skills matter for adult learners? A lot of the research is done in K-12 settings, but it shows that social emotional learning supports developing positive attitudes towards self and others, more social behaviors, and improved academic performance. And it also has a lasting impact found through longitudinal follow-up studies, and it helped reduce emotional distress and improve impulse control. And also research shows that SEL skills and lifelong learning have a significant positive correlation. And this is especially relevant for adult learners who are required to meet the evolving needs of today's workplace and also increasingly digital society. Like we were having issues today. It necessitates, continuing learning and upskilling. So looking at this list, do you think these effects would help your students? I hope everyone's saying yes. But anyways, so now that we understand the benefit of social emotional learning, let's think a little bit about incorporating these skills into your instruction. As Kim said, there are 5 areas of social emotional learning. And how many of you felt a little overwhelmed thinking about embedding all these skills? I would be a little bit overwhelmed, but you don't need to implement everything all at once. And chances are you are already incorporating some of these relevant skills into your instruction. And all you need to do is to be a little bit mindful and intentional about it. For example, how many of you teach employability skills or college and career readiness skills? Some of these skills correlate. And many of the social emotional skills correspond to employability skills. And both sets of skills are critical for adult learners' workplace success, right? And if you're curious to see correlations between different frameworks, there is a website from Harvard University. I think Josie will be putting in the chat. You can compare different frameworks. But now let's try to do of annotation activities. Let's look at a couple of activities you might already be doing in your class. And look at the SEL wheel. So how many of you do goal setting with your students? And what area of social emotional learning skills do you think that correlates? If you could put a sticker or a check mark on the castle wheel on this screen, goal setting, where do you think fits? Which area? There are 5 areas in this wheel. Yeah. A lot of check marks in the self-management area and a little bit of responsible decision making. That's yeah, very related. Yes. So goal setting would fall under the planning and organization skills in employability and correlates with social emotional learning, self-management skills. And I think all can be a little bit similar or blend into each other. Depends on how you implement it. So that's great. Thank you. Josie, are you able to clear the, okay, thank you so much. Now let's look at another thing that you might be already doing. Oh, whoops, I went too far. Active listening. Can you do just one, please? Okay, good. So for active listening, what areas of SEL skills do you think correlate? Relationship skills, social awareness, exactly, yeah. A little bit of self-awareness. Yeah, some of the communication competencies under the employability skills, such as, observing carefully or listening actively, are a part of social awareness and relationship skills for SEL. And I'm hoping you are feeling a little bit less overwhelmed by realizing, oh, I already do this, or it will be a small tweak that I need to do to incorporate SEL skills into your lessons. Okay, one more thing. Oh, thank you, Josie, for clearing the annotation. Thank you. Okay, and here is a tangible example of what it could look like to embed some elements of SEL in your classroom activities. So the brief includes a few other examples, but this is one. An inclusive classroom that supports peer dialogue can foster respectful and constructive communication and conflict resolution through expressions of opinions, understanding, and empathy. And as discussed earlier, some of these skills correlate with employability skills. and providing opportunities to, cooperate with your classmates, with, students, classmates, and incorporating these group discussions, perspective taking exercises, using these sentence frames can help students develop collaborative skills and practice respectful and effective communication. Right? So how many of you already incorporate group discussions and use sentence frames similar to these? Okay, so my purpose here is to kind of, help you think, okay, this is doable. Anyways, I hope you feel that way. Any questions in the chat, Josie? I haven't been able to follow up, but I can.
No, I don't see any questions in the chat. A lot of people agreeing.
Great, thank you, thank you. All right, so next you will hear about 2 implementation examples from California agencies. You met Veronica from LAUSD's DACE and Stephen from Placer School for Adults. And these programs you will hear, but they focused on different areas of social emotional learning. But what's notable is that both programs found correlations between their SEL implementation efforts and student persistence. So without any further ado, I'd like to pass it to Veronica.
Thank you, Sachiko. As mentioned, I'm going to discuss some of the ways that our division integrated SEL into our practices. So in alignment with our district's strategic plan, and specifically our joy and wellness pillar, our division decided to embrace SEL to enhance both student and staff well-being around academic achievement. So we wanted to begin with by ensuring that our staff understood the core competencies of our SEL framework, which slightly differs from the CASEL framework that Kimberly and Sachiko shared earlier. And ours is growth mindset, self-management, self-efficacy, and social awareness. So since the 22-23 school year, our focus has been on building the capacity of our staff, right? Because we want them to incorporate these things in the classroom. We wanted to ensure that they were familiar enough with the framework and felt comfortable, in beginning their work in implementation. We also aimed to provide like practical strategies, turnkey lessons that could be used, because that's really one of the challenges a lot of teachers face is how do we implement this in the classroom? How do we really do this realistically with our adult students? So to ensure a unified approach in this implementation, we started off by collaborating with CalPro, and Sachiko was part of that. For a division-wide professional development at the beginning of the school year. And then this kind of helped us introduce and highlight the importance of SEL and connecting it to academic achievement. And we ensured that, this was all hands on deck effort. And it was co-facilitated by CalPro, our DACE administrators, advisors, and really trying to make those crucial links for our staff and teachers. So another way, aside from the PD and ensuring that everybody had the capacity and understood this framework, we worked on integrating SEL in our practices by developing CASA's EL Civics co-ops for growth mindset and self-efficacy. Co-ops are civic objectives and additional assessment plans for those of you that may not know that provide, that include lessons and assessments that provide additional support for language learning and civic participation. But they also, what you guys may know is they also provide additional funding for schools when students pass the assessments. So making, that a bonus, right? And these co-ops were developed and created by our teachers, our advisors, and it was led by our EL Civics advisor, Paul Young. And these materials and resources were rolled out through our ESL program to reinforce these principles in the classroom. And we used various channels to get them out, which included, you know, our community of practices and trainings. So I do want to give you guys a brief glimpse of like what one of our co-ops looks like, particularly the growth mindset co-op. I'm going to start off with, this is a sample of a rubric for one of the tasks. There are currently 2 existing co-ops, as I mentioned, growth mindset, which you see here, and self-efficacy. And we're currently working on developing 2 additional co-ops, which include self-management and social awareness. And here, this rubric that's provided, it provides sample responses, student responses, and scoring criteria for the teachers once the civics co-ops are completed by students. Here's the next slide. And then this is a snapshot of a beginning low lesson that are part of the co-ops. I think I failed to mention earlier that there's 4 tasks per co-op. And then we have created 2 for lower levels and 2 for upper levels. So they're definitely level appropriate for the students. And here, for example, you can see that the task is for students to read a story, write sentences to describe the character's growth mindset. Here's a sample of what, like, you know, a brief snippet of the story is. We also have like sample, and I'm sorry, it's a little blurry. I was trying to reduce the number of slides I had, but here it shows, you know, we have like listening activities, matching activities, try to provide a wide variety of different types of activities for our ESL students. And then each lesson also contains videos, which is here. And what's really, really cool about these videos is that they actually include our day students and really embody what the SEO principles are for that, you know, prospective co-op. So it's really a nice way to kind of like amplify our student voice and representation. So I'm going to give you a sample. I'm going to play, it's a short video, about 1 minute, so you guys can kind of see it in action. Let me see if this works. Okay, sorry. I'm too far. Let's see. I might need your support, Josie.
No problem. I'm trying to click on it as well.
Okay, thank you. Our apologies.
Yeah. Thank you for your patience. Oh, no, not what I want. Oh, goodness. It's not playing currently. It just worked. Let me open it in YouTube real quick. Let's see.
It's really short. And if we don't get an opportunity to see it now, you know, maybe we can send you guys a link so you can just take a quick peek. We have them on YouTube. And like I said, they're relatively short. But you know, it's really nice to, you know, have the students participate in this and, you know, share their stories. Oh, well, here we go.
Thank you for your patience. We've gotten here.
Thank you. Oh, it's gone now.
Sorry, Josie.
No, you're fine.
Do you want me to share or you got it?
Is it playing right now?
No.
It's not playing.
Oh, it must have stopped sharing for me. Let's see now. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Let me know if you can't hear it as well.
My name is Melissa Escobar. I'm from El Salvador. I came to Los Angeles just before the pandemic and enrolled at Jersey High School. When the pandemic happened, I didn't have a computer and internet connection. I couldn't continue studying at home. I felt sad and lost. I couldn't speak English. I didn't have any friends. I was isolated at home and depressed for a long time. Until one day, I told myself that I couldn't be self whatever. That will be a long time because I'm young. I remember why I had come to the United States for the opportunities to learn and grow. I can't be afraid. I have to try. This was a challenge. I found the courage to change my thinking and started attending classes at Avon Freeman Occupational Center. Coming to school, studying, and developing new skills makes me feel better, optimistic about my future.
Thank you, Josie. So yeah, so as you can see, they were really short, really practical videos, that we worked on creating with our students, just as a sample, right? So let me move to the next slide. I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. So the continuous integration for us of, these SEO principles and practices into our co-ops, our PD sessions, administrator meetings, we've embedded growth mindset in a lot of our COPs. They've had promising results. I've only, really shared about the co-ops, but we notably observed a 5% increase in our student persistence during the 22-23 school year. And although at present, I'm going to be honest, we can't prove that there's a direct correlation to the integration of these practices. But based on anecdotal evidence from our teachers, from our students and staff, we believe that our SEO efforts have had a positive impact on this increase of student engagement and persistence. So looking ahead for us, because this is always a constant. It's constant work, we're constantly working to, improve our practices and support our students. So we aim to further these initiatives by developing our remaining co-ops. So as I mentioned earlier, they were the self-management and, forgive me for forgetting, self-management and social awareness co-ops. We're also working on developing a training for our assistant principals of counseling. And this training is going to focus on high leverage counseling skills that align with the SEO principles. So again, I'm not sure if it was Kimberly or Sachi that mentioned, stuff like goal setting and self-care, time management. So the aim is to really support our students both in and out of the classroom. So we want to ensure that our counselors and our advisors are, helping support our students, from the moment they walked in the door. Because as we know with adult ed, you want to embrace your students when they come in, right? And make them feel like, they are wanted, they are a part of our community, and, so we can better support them. So that's it for me. Are there any questions before we move on? I'm not sure how we are on time, Sachko.
It's good. It's good. Veronica, we have a question from Christy. I think we prepped for this. Are the co-op materials available on the OTAN's EL Civics? I think it's EL Civics repository, but Exchange.
Yeah, so it's not available on the Exchange, not the actual lessons. I have confirmed that the rubrics are available, but lessons or anything like that could be available upon request, and I can give you the name and email of the person that you would make that request to. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Veronica. Perhaps we can, yeah.
Oh, and I think
the
somebody said which co-op numbers. I believe it's 55. Civic Objective 55.
Thank you, Veronica. Any other questions for LAUSD days, Veronica? Okay, thank you, Veronica. Let's welcome Stephen.
Turn my mic on. There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm going to start off with, let's all take a big social, emotional, self-regulation breath. Information, in case you didn't know, learning is painful. The difference between someone who's traumatized by learning and someone who moves forward is good self-regulation skills. So I want to remind all of us of that. And so when we see somebody who's stuck and they haven't developed those self-regulation skills because it wasn't in their vocabulary and learning, they're the ones who drop out and stop out. And that became a question for us at PSA. And I want to give a big shout out to all my peers that went first. And Dace, nice job, you guys. I know that in the past, I've reached out to Dace for material they've created, and they are more than willing to share. How wonderful to have such a big brother, sister in the neighborhood who's doing such great work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to get down into the weeds with a smaller program, our adult school. And we looked at, because it's near and dear to my heart, we looked at social emotional learning and trauma-informed learning and brought it to our staff. And when I mean staff, I mean everybody from the janitor through the administration. So I'm going to go on to the next slide here. So we are a plaster school for adults. We're up in Auburn, California. We're a part of the Sierra Joint Consortium. We cover from Auburn all the way up to Tahoe Truckee. So we have a vast amount of territory, probably bigger than actually DACE has in physical size. We probably have more territory. They just have more people. You can send some our way. We've got room. All right. So in 2017-18, back when I was the coordinator for curriculum instruction, we were looking at our student persister rates, and everybody looks at student persister rates. The state pays us for those student persister rates, but what we were really trying to understand is what underlies some of the deep impending issues. And it's easy to say, well, we just need to get students to school. And the other side of it was teachers were saying, you know, I've tried everything. So I want to pause for a quick second here. What I'm going to share with you and I'm going to go into not only applies to our students, but it applies to our staff. And if we can't give our staff the grace to look at their own social emotional learning and how being a teacher can be traumatizing, then we're not going to make the headway we need to move forward. So this applies to everyone who works in education. Education today is a very difficult world to work in, but also very rewarding when we have the self-regulation we need. So we did internal research, and it showed one of the key factors was the levels of trauma that many of our students experienced. I would argue that probably if you're working with adult ed learners and they're immigrants, they're incarcerated, they are students who struggled in school, they're what I call wounded learners. So education is painful, more so than the rest of us, and we forget that. Internal research also showed that trauma-informed classrooms that provide key tenets of social emotional learning see a marked increase. This is anecdotal, but I think the evidence is starting to show up more and more because we're starting to analyze this information. So PSA in 2017-18, I got together with my lead team and we began developing professional development opportunities to give our teachers the skills. We provided PD around trauma-informed learning and how to build classrooms informed by SEL. Teachers were given research information and tools to begin working in their PLCs. And here's a shameless drop for CALPRO. We went through the PLC process with CALPRO. We turned our trauma-informed learning, SEL-informed learning into part of our PLC learning. So it's a shameless little ad for CALPRO there. So this is some of the stuff we looked at. So if you've never looked at it, Nadine Burke, Dr. Nadine Burke, this video on how childhood trauma affects health across a lifetime. This is the result of work done by Kaiser and CDC looking at the ACEs study. And this is where you have to be very diligent and very careful when you start introducing this type of information, because your teachers start looking at this information and they start seeing how trauma has affected them. So you have to have the grace to give them the skills and the breadth and room to be able to look at their own struggles. So if you haven't seen that video, it's a great one. We looked at how, and if you look at the pyramid up above it, it's a little blurry. When you look at those ACEs factors, the more ACEs factors a person has, the more likely they are to be traumatized and less likely they are to be able to move forward with their life. I looked at it for myself and I was shocked. We also looked at a very key book that came out. Now it's been a while, but it was, and we shared this with all of our teachers. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And he is probably one of the premier neurologists who started to help us understand how trauma and PTSD affects learning and learning outcomes. And that then translate into helping our teachers develop those social emotional learning environments. So before you can ask teachers to do anything, you have to give them the skills to understand what it is they're doing. So that was what we began to develop with our teachers. From there, once we spent the time, and that was a good year's worth of work, once we spent the time in trying to understand and grasp what it really means to look at trauma-informed learning in social, emotional, informed classroom settings, we began to offer tools that were available. One of those tools is put out by our very own AIR. It's called Self-Assessing Educator Social and Emotional Competencies in Instruction. It's a great tool. They just refreshed it recently. Big shout out to AIR, who is basically, if you don't know that, the mother company of CALPRO. They've done a great job on that, and it gives teachers access to take a look at their own social emotional skill sets. And when you give them those skill sets, then they can begin to see. One of the things I often heard from my teachers before we started doing this work was, well, students, this is adult ed, students drop out. And I was like, but are we understanding the underpinning reasons why they're dropping out? And then it changed the way my teachers understood our students. Like, for instance, a student who comes into the classroom has never dealt with technology before, and they look like that deer in the headlights. Well, you're probably not going to see them again if you haven't built in the skill sets to address and see those struggles that our students are facing. So it changes the whole playbook. And speaking of playbook, no pun intended, there's a great tool called the Playbooks in Social Emotional Learning. Now, this is oriented towards K-12. There's more coming out towards adult education, which I am so happy to see. Thank you, AIR, and all the other DACE and all the other providers who are starting to create tools for the adult ed world. Because through the ACEs study, we know that those traumas that were experienced in childhood carry through adulthood. And if they haven't been dealt with, then they're going to continue. It's the same circle of trauma over and over again. So we gave them these skill sets. And I'm going to go on to the next one. And then we gave them practical, actual tools that a lot of times teachers, our teacher, counselor, mentor, what I like to call prosthetic executive function, big flashy words, basically helping students see the next step forward. And in some cases, even in a way, like a parent figure. So the 211 website, which has become more prevalent across the state, is a tool that teachers can access immediately and get support. So Sachiko is going to take this away and share it with you. And what she's basically sharing here is this is the 211 website. You can put in your zip code. I'm looking for what you're looking for. Put in your zip code. You hit get help. And it will bring you to, if you have students who are food insecure, it will bring you to sites that you can contact immediately that will help them get food. You can do this right from the classroom. You can see a map, brings it up immediately. There are phone numbers. You can call them right from the classroom. If they are housing insecure, there are mental health issues. You mean, the list goes on. And our counties, these are put out by counties. These county by county are adopting these. And you can see that the tools are available to our teachers who are the first line of defense. This is also shared with our frontline staff. Again, first line of defense. Somebody shows up and their intention is to go to school because they want to get a better life, but they're food insecure, they have mental health issues. We can begin to address those. It's not that we're counselors. It's not that we're replacing all these other providers. It's that we're bridging the gap to get them in line with these opportunities that are available. So thank you, Sachiko. That's one of the tools we shared with our teachers. The other tool she's going to open up, Digital Promise. This is a fantastic tool. If you're looking for free, easily accessible curriculum that your teachers can use today, Digital Promise. On their website, you go, it's for K-12 and adult learners. You go to the adult learner side. For instance, what Sachiko is going to do is she's going to hit emotion. And you open up the emotion, and a wheel is going to open up. So she's going to click on that, and here's a wheel. And this wheel is going to show different areas of emotion that you might want to address. So go up to the adverse experiences, would you, Sachiko? She's going to click on that. It's going to explain to you what that is. And then if she goes to explore strategies, which is down below, it's going to open up different strategies. And each strategy has aligned with it videos and lessons that you can employ in the classroom. So for instance, one of those might be building empathy up in the far right corner up there, Sachiko. And thank you, by the way, for driving. So she'll open that up. Here it is, overview. Use it in your learning environment, curriculum, supporting factors, additional resources. These tools are available for your teachers. They're free, they're accessible, and they can put them to use tomorrow. My teachers started taking advantage of this tool, and they were just in glee over the fact that these tools had already been created for our teachers to use in the workplace and in the classroom. Okay, if we can go back to the slideshow, deep breath again, lots of information there. Ooh, download. By the way, as you're taking in this information and you're making connections, you're getting free endorphins, or what we could call true opiates in the brain. All right. So one of the things that we found, it's starting to wake up, it's taking a few minutes here, technology, you gotta love technology. By the way, Josie, nice job navigating the technology glitches. That shows her regulation. She's able to keep going. Okay, along with addressing trauma, one of the keys to supporting students obtaining their goals is to help them see that they have goals. We know that when students are in the fight or flight part of the brain, the amygdala, that they cannot self-regulate. They cannot think about tomorrow. They do not think about tomorrow. So when they come into the classroom, what we discerned was that our teachers needed to help them learn how to do their own goal making. And then this is key, the self-regulation to understand when they come across what I call the roadblocks, the bumps in the road. What do I do? What you'll see in adult education quite often is students will get to a certain point, they'll show up for 6 classes, and then they'll hit a roadblock. It could be transportation, childcare, food insecurity, housing. It could be so many things. And what's their first answer? Is to drop out. And that is the pattern of their life. So we had to create the prosthetic executive functioning supports, goals, and then goals that the students create with the teacher. At first, they'll be very broad goals. What's your goal? I want to get a high school diploma. That's wonderful. Now let's get into the weeds. What does it mean? How many credits do you need? How much time will that take? What are some of the barriers that are going to get in the way? And how can we support you? 211 website, for instance. So we began to build goal opportunities for the teachers to work with the students to understand where they're at. Developing the executive function, this is grounded in behavioral science, neuropsychology. Through the intentional process identified by the Center for Developing Child at Harvard, you have to reduce external sources of stress. You have to create responsive and supportive relationships, and you have to build core self-regulation skills. That's what the goals are all about, building those self-regulation skills. Go to our next slide. These were some free, we used a different tool, but these are some free tools that are available. What you can see is they're creating their goals, they're looking at their barriers, they're supporting their, what we call strengtheners. Who do I call when I'm struggling? Who do I call when I don't want to go to school? Who do I call when I'm struggling with a computer glitch? Who's available for me? So these are available. These are free tools that were created by CalPro that can be accessed and used. We began looking at those and then looking at the results of what happened when our teachers were able to use those. Over a 5-year period, which included the COVID pandemic, boy, you want to talk about a stressor. We worked diligently to continue. We saw this as an opportunity. Wow, this is going to be huge. Teachers walked away with new skill sets, student persistent rates. Now, can we completely tie this to this? Not one for one, but we could say anecdotally, we saw major gains. We went from student persistent rates across our programs prior to COVID and right after COVID at about roughly 40%. We are now hitting 85% across programs. And I would argue that a lot of it has to do with our teachers understanding how to create a social-emotionally and trauma-informed classroom space that helps our students see that they have a path forward no matter what they run into. There you are. Deep breath. You've gotten some great information today. Any questions you might have, and you may walk away from this go, I'm overwhelmed. Questions can come later. I want to thank all of my peers who did a great job sharing information, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sachiko.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We will be, this webinar is recorded, so we'll be following up with you with the recording and other resources. Before we go though, if you could fill out this evaluation form for today's webinar. We take your feedback seriously. We would like to hear from you. How did it go? Please scan the QR code, or I think Josie put in the chat the link to the evaluation form. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us today and this afternoon. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you at our next webinar, which is in May. I think next month we are doing critical democratic literacy. So hope you can join us again. Thank you so much.